Fate. Souls and Singularities by Mundatorem Chapter 129-130. Chapter 129. We already did a training montage, didn't we? A symbol burned its way into the ground, soon accompanied by the body of the freshly summoned servant rising from the ground. The man rolled his shoulders until they popped, then flexed them back and forth before his helmet turned left and right as he examined his location, then turned his attention downwards. Leonidas gave a curious hum as he raised his right leg up and shook it several times before he grunted once and lowered it back into the snow, seemingly uncaring for the cold that now assailed his body. Utterly failing to heed the requests put forth to dress himself properly and still wearing a leather set of underwear and a red cape around his shoulders. This was quite unlike a summoning I am used to. It feels strangely tingly. Tarkus stood not far from him, looking the man up and down before he raised his hand. "Aren't you cold?" Leonidas turned his head towards the voice, taking stock of the saber servant stood not far from him before he gave a hearty chuckle. "Cold? Nonsense. This is merely training my body to endure any environment it might find itself in." His arms crossed over his chest and he puffed out his muscles. "I am training the weakness from my body." Tarkus remained silent for a moment before he nodded his head in affirmation. "Okay." Olga turned on him and did a double take. "Don't just go, okay, at that." "Why not?" Tarkus asked in an innocent tone of voice, tilting his head to the side. He said he was training to fight in different places. "That makes sense to me." "It's going to make even less sense when he freezes to death." "Ha ha ha ha." Leonidas merely gave a hearty cry, throwing his head back. Do not underestimate the resolve of a Spartan warrior. He then swung out his arm, pointing to the director. "And it is a resolve that you shall also build up," he stated, looking towards her almost as if his eyes were going to catch fire. "I am beyond pleased that you are taking to my training regime. Though the timing is, perhaps, a little later than I would approve of, it does not matter." The lancer then spread his arms wide, gesturing to their surroundings. "But the location is something I dare not argue with. It is the harshest environments that breed the best from warriors." Olga was certain he was grinning behind his helmet. "Worry not, by the time we see combat, I shall train you to be able to march into battle with even the most stout of servants." "See?" Tarkus pointed to the man in a positive voice. "He's going to make you healthy? That's good, right?" "Of course, I shall accept no slackers," Leonidas bellowed out. "Which means any warrior who hears the call of battle shall be joining me as well." He turned his head, soon spotting one of the Norse putting their tent away. "You." The man started, shifting around and seeking out the voice that had bellowed out. Even with his back to the Spartan, the man couldn't help but feel as though it had been directed at him. As he turned around, he found himself momentarily startled by the man who was dressed barely 2 steps from being butt-ass naked. "Me? Yes. Does your heart beat loudly? Does your soul cry out for battle?" Leonidas barked at him. "Do you seek to defeat those who threaten your home? Why ye, louder!" Leonidas screamed at him, though his voice was more encouraging than condescending. "Shout loud enough that the gods themselves can hear your determination." "Yes, excellent." As though a switch had been flipped, Leonidas' voice shifted back into a more subdued tone as he looked to the director. "So you shall not be training alone." He trailed off, turning his head and looking at her up and down. "Though, it might be more challenging for you than for them," he admitted after a moment before he dismissed it. "No matter. The greater the challenge, the greater the gain." Several people stared at him for a moment before Cu took that opportunity to speak up. "Well, glad to have someone around to whip people into shape." "Ah, the child of light?" Leonidas exclaimed in surprise before he took note of his appearance, reaching up and cupping his helmet chin. "No, the caster version from that time, is it? Well, it matters not to me. I know the heart of a warrior still burns within you," he dismissed, lowering his hand back to his side. "Though I was not completely informed as to my purpose here beyond training. Basically we're gonna teach her to fight." Cu pointed at Olga, then moved his finger away from her and towards the Dragon Slayer armor. "So she can tell that thing what to do." Leonidas remained silent as he stared at the hollow suit of armor. A nearly imperceptible gulp soon emerged from his throat as he turned back around to face the caster. So she is to take command of the ghost the golem. Cu stared at him oddly for his choice of wording before he gave a nod of the head, something like that. Yeah, he admitted before he placed his hands on his hips. Well? The Spartan looked to Olga once again. The aura of confidence returned in full. Ha 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 ha. I shall make her into a passing warrior before my time here is over. The director's communicator flashed on. This time Pharaoh's face appeared, and I'm now here. She stated with a casual tone of voice. I had a quick glance at the documents you told me to look at. Seems fairly strange for wyvern behavior on both accounts. She remarked, so your guess of someone controlling them is likely correct. Olga all but jumped at the opportunity to be engaged in a conversation that wasn't about her. That much we have already inferred. What else have you to say? Wyverns like to roost in high-up places. Pharaoh's remarked easily enough. Going through the mountains of the continent was something that I actively tried to avoid because of that. Sometimes they will head down to find some food, but for the most part, barring any subsets or training, they will stick to more out-of-reach locations. They tend to get a little antsy otherwise. That sounds more akin to the behavior of birds. Leonidas couldn't help but comment, the conversation attracting his attention. What do you mean by subsets? Olga instead cottoned on, squinting at the caster. You mean different races of wyvern? Oh yeah, dozens of them. Pharaoh's waved her hand. The kingdom of Drangolic had flightless worms they used as mounts. Then there was the occasional hellkite wyvern that would swim across the ocean to the continent. Those were big, more often than not around the size of a dragon. She frowned. There were the smaller breeds as well, they breathed lightning. Olga raised her hand to stop her. Would their behavior be different? For the most part, not really. Pharaoh's admitted, save the flightless worms, but that would be a given, seeing as how they don't have legs. She coughed and turned her head to Leonidas. Now then, he won't be much help in a fight, sorry to say. At the puzzled look from the director, Pharaoh's explained further, it's because you're not contracted to him in the same way that the other two who came down with you ended up being. His support is coming straight from Chaldea and the summoning area. He can maintain his physical existence easily enough, but if he tries to start using his full power without a solid anchor, then he's just gonna burn himself out and get snapped back to Chaldea. Leonidas gave a troubled noise. Though it would pain me to be apart from the field of battle, I suppose I can mitigate that heartache with seeing to the training of others. He mumbled, though he still sounded slightly aggrieved by the situation. His helmet cast its gaze across the camp once again. Although you appear to be in the midst of something already, this seems a more inopportune time to begin training. That was true enough, Olga discerned as she looked around. The group was already in the midst of splitting in half, with those who weren't actually fighters being sent away with a couple warriors to protect them, while those who were left were preparing themselves to travel with them. Olga grit her teeth behind her lips. This wasn't an outcome she had desired, but it was one that was unavoidable, apparently at least. Taking a bunch of normal humans with them to fight wyverns was a terrible idea, but they were evidently set on doing so anyway, so bringing them with her group was the safest option. Somehow, at least she could say she wasn't the only one unhappy with it. Torin watched the children and a few women making their way to the other side of the camp. The 10 or so warriors led by Torni were set to head out soon enough, around the same time that the other detachment would be following them due north to do battle with wyverns. Though his expression was stone-faced, devoid of any sort of emotion, the same could not be said for his internal feelings on the matter. A mixture of rage and shame flooded through him. The fact he couldn't convince them otherwise was something that deeply wounded him. It would have made more sense to him if they had just listened to his instructions and continued to head south. When he thought of them traveling north, visions of the burning grotto flooded his mind. The screams of his family and comrades rung loudly in his ear. The smell of ash filling his nose. His body trembled with the mere thought of it, the black dragon that breathed yellow flames and with a single red eye upon its forehead. Generations of his people had battled with it. It wasn't until the day of the attack that he realized how foolish those legends were. They weren't battling the black dragon of the abyss, they were simply warding it away, akin to raising your arms and shouting at a bear to frighten them off. Whether the abyss dragon had simply humored them all that time and finally grown weary, or it realized that they posed no threat, didn't matter in the least to him. All that mattered was the end result. TCH. His tongue clicked out a noise, carrying over the wind as he sharply turned his head down and glared at the snow. His arms crossed over his chest and his eyes scrunching themselves as tightly shut as they could. Once again leading people to certain death against the winged serpents? Was it something he was cursed to experience? His second life to end just as his first had? In a sea of flames? Jarl. His eyes opened up and looked to the direction of the voice. Brynjar approached the man with a steeled expression. He was still polite enough, but the two of them had made their difference of opinion known to one another at this point. Brynjar. Torin grunted to him in greeting. His jaw rolled as the pair fell into a silence for a few seconds. Torni shall soon migrate from our flock. He stated simply, earning a nod from the blond man. And how many remain? Torni has taken 9 warriors with him. Brynjar replied, Torlif, Siggy, Degrun, Bergun, Ger, Brander, Ulf, Eldred and Frigg. Torin remained silent for a few moments, committing the names to memory before one struck him as more familiar. He's taken Frigg? He has. She made the better stews, he knows. Hey, bastard. Brynjar cracked a smile. I said as much, though he claimed it to be for the benefit of the youngsters. He spoke in an incredulous tone, leaning back and crossing his arms over his chest before shaking his head, to grow them into big and strong warriors. He boasted in an exaggerated tone of voice. He wanted the food. Torin dismissed with a grunt. You can still. Torin. That was all he said. That one word was enough for the caster's eyes to scrunch themselves shut and for a long sigh of resignation to slip from between his lips. I see. The servant spoke after a few moments of tense silence, slowly shifting his body and turning his head to look over his shoulder. He could see the Chaldeans not far from him engaged in some sort of animated discussion, along with a new figure who looked barely 3 steps from being naked. Apparently dressing appropriately for the weather was just something no one from that place did. You seem wary around the sky serpents. Brynjar spoke up after a few moments, did you? There are many stories from my past I can share with you, Brynjar. Torin replied as he turned back around, looking towards the blond man with a dead look in his orbs. That is not one of them. Tread upon the subject no further. All right. The Norseman nodded his head once, accepting the command easily enough. He could recognize pain when he saw it, and the reluctance to fight the dragons left him with little to the imagination on what had occurred in the past. We have just under 70 warriors left to command. I see. Torin exhaled after a moment, then jerked his head to the Chaldeans. I shall inform them of this, then make ourselves ready for a march. As we head further north, we should prepare for more difficult passage. He tapped his helmet near his eyeport with his left hand, then pointed his index finger up. Keep watch upon the skies. He rested atop the rocks, his right elbow placed atop his knee and propped up his chin. Red eyes stared up towards the large arch tree rising high into the sky. Though Calamate himself had noticed that there was a considerable difference between the arch trees that he knew of and the trees that occupied this land. Namely the addition of branches, an arch tree just extended into the sky and finished up as mere spikes. The trees around this land had branches which extended from out of their trunk, though they all originated from the same plant. Each branch was unique. It had a different length, a change in the number of leaves that grew from its limbs, or perhaps it would have a few different bends in the wood. The differences would range from being small to being clear as day. Akal had said there was something poetic about it, though he failed to understand what she meant. Was it that everything could come from the same source and still experience change? He was just more curious as to why the arch trees didn't have branches to them, almost as though they had been inverted. Calamate himself had thought the trees of this land grew upside down as well, at least until he pulled one from the ground and found himself staring at roots covered in dirt. At which point he had it explained to him. Though he still couldn't grasp why the arch trees didn't have branches. Perhaps if arch trees had branches, then dragons could sit atop them much like birds did the smaller counterparts. His brows furrowed slightly, his fist coming away from his chin and his forearm resting atop his knee this time. Leaning back, he turned his head up towards the trunk of the arch tree that extended high into the sky and found himself staring at it with sudden understanding. He'd noticed some unrest with his smaller kin due to being situated upon the ground rather than somewhere higher. Though their communication with him wasn't nearly up to his own level of speech, they could at least infer their general feelings to him. Branches, he muttered quietly to himself, looking off to the side for a few moments and rolling his lower jaw several times. His teeth ground against one another before he pushed himself up and turned his attention to the base of the archtree. He could see Artoria wandering around the outskirts, keeping her distance from everyone else. She preferred isolation, though she lacked the same capacity for conversation with the smaller kin that he and Akal had. So perhaps it was merely a case of her being unable to speak that brought about this sense of separation? Asking Akal to raise the capabilities of the smaller wyverns was always something that he had intended to do, but the arms came first, it seemed. Akal's attention was more focused upon that task at the moment, which left him with very little to be doing. Their talk of different kingdoms had been enlightening, but it still didn't provide him with the answers he was looking for. The kingdom that would feel right. Something that would resonate with not just his spirit, but the spirit of his kindred as well. That was what he needed to understand, therefore he had to understand what it was that truly brought fulfillment. Something that would bring fulfillment to the dragons and would also be something that could grow and evolve just as the humans had been able to do. He trudged through the snow, approaching Artoria while his thoughts continued to wander. She must have sensed him closing in as she halted her mount and shifted her head towards his direction. Her helmet focused on him and she remained deathly silent as he got closer and closer. He made no attempt to call out to her and he had figured out she wouldn't do the same to him. Artoria. He greeted quietly once he had gotten close enough, though he wasn't actually looking at her at the time. His attention was still focused upon the archtree behind her. You were a king once, yes? I was. Did, Calamate hummed quietly to himself. Artoria made no effort to hasten his words. The center of your kingdom was Camelot? That was the name of the city that I built, yes, Artoria confirmed without a hint of emotion in her voice. Calamate paused. Something about that tone was disconcerting to him, enough so that his attention shifted away from the tree and onto her. Did that concern you? That seemed to throw her for a loop. Her body tensed for a split second before it loosened slightly. Explain, she demanded in a single word. He paused for a moment, considering his words before speaking them. Though you offer advice to me frequently, I have noted that when I compare your posture to Akal, she is more emotive? He hummed, then nodded her head. Yes, emotive. She is much more liberal with her thoughts and feelings. Artoria bluntly stated as she adjusted her grip on her reins. She is no king. Do all kings speak as you do? No, Artoria didn't even hesitate in the answer. Not all kings acted as I did either. Though I suspect you are already aware of such disparities between rulers. Yes, but, Calamate seemed to struggle to find the correct words. It is just that. You achieved what I am seeking to accomplish, and yet when you speak of Camelot and your own kingdom he exhaled, tilting his head at her, I am not sure what to make of how you talk so blandly of it. I feel a sense of trepidation surge through my soul at the thought of a kingdom for my own, and yet when I see you speak of your kingdom You take issue with my manner of speaking? Do you suppose that the kingdom of Camelot now means nothing to me? Does it? Artoria paused for a moment, looking away from him and straight ahead. Do you suppose that my choice words for the kingdom I built give the impression that after all this time, I hold no feelings for it, that everything I strove to create now means nothing to me? I do not know. Then I shall answer this and wash your doubts from your mind. She let out a quiet breath. Camelot means as much to me now as it did then. Even now, I can still see it as though I had never left. That ephemeral kingdom that seems as though it is a distant dream. Oh, I see. Calamate responded after a moment, nodding his head. Sorry. Do not apologize to me. It belittles yourself. Artoria sternly reminded him, you seek to fashion yourself as a king. Do you not? Draw attention to your mistakes if you make them, but do not seek forgiveness. Learn from them and better yourself. Better myself, Calamate muttered, turning his attention to the archtree once again. Does a kingdom need a city? Camelot was the central hub of Albion. All commerce and culture moved through that city to the far-flung reaches of my kingdom. It is where my knights resided and where I ruled from. Do all kingdoms need them? Yes. Calamate grunted once. Then I shall make this my own Camelot, for lack of a better word. Artoria remained silent for a moment, then allowed her helmet to drift over the surroundings and the complete lack of anything beside frozen bodies and bloodied stains littering the snowy fields. In the center of all of it was the giant tree that extended far, far into the sky, with a large space carved into the base of the tree that served as a singular hall. I would prefer this not be compared to Camelot, she responded after a brief pause. I did not intend to leave it like this, Calamate remarked. I would start with this location, this place which shall serve as the birth of my kingdom. He paused. Which means I shall go out and collect supplies. You are going to go personally? If I am to lead, I would do so from example. Calamate remained silent for a moment, then nodded his head once as if to confirm it. I would not demand another do something that I would be unwilling to do myself. That is wrong, and even if I understand disparity, that will not change the fact I believe that all have the capacity for equality in some way. It is just a matter of finding it. Artoria remained silent before she spoke. If that is your command, then that is your command. Will this kingdom be one that fosters individual talents then? Or one that finds the talents of the many for the benefit of the kingdom? I am unsure. I want to create a chance, Calamate declared. A place where one has every chance to achieve their inner desires. So long as new wyverns are born, they shall always have desires they wish to achieve, goals they want realized. It would turn to anarchy, Artoria remarked, unless you would also aim these desires so that they were to benefit the kingdom as a whole? I don't understand kingship, nor am I certain I want to. The black dragon revealed quietly. I command the wyverns and they do so without question. Is that what leadership is? Just making demands and seeing them carried out? Yes. Your response was quicker than hers. Calamate muttered. A call said that some simply had greater vision or power, and therefore it fell to them to lead others down a path. That is how a king operates, though true wisdom means nothing without power. Artoria added on, shifting her head away from him. And true power means nothing without wisdom. Find balance between the two, or you will make for a poor king. Ha! Calamate gave her a quiet chuckle in response, looking down to the ground for a moment. If that is what you both say, then I should listen to it. Turning away from her, he started to make his way further and further from the lancer. Twin black wings jutted out from his back and extended as far as they could. You intend to leave now? Artoria asked, not turning to face him as she spurred her mount onwards at a steady pace. I also intend to dwell upon what I have been told, Calamate explained. Finding supplies for my new home and thinking upon the burden of kingship. I shall do both without aid. When I have collected enough, then I shall summon for my kin to aid me. There was a noticeable pause before his posture stiffened. Does the concept of commanding another truly come easily? I fear I will continue to do so without realizing it. Making demands of another is a simple task. Artoria scoffed quietly as she stopped her horse, once again looking to stare into the back of the dragon's head. It is making them obey your commands willingly that is the true test of a king. Be it out of respect for your power or your wisdom, it matters not. I do not want to be commanding because I am superior to them, he muttered. You are a king. Artoria responded after a moment before she turned her head away and resumed her trot. That does not make you superior. The round table was one without hierarchy. All who sat upon it were peers to one another, not lords and servants. I might have been king, but as a knight I was their equal and they were mine. Calamate turned his head to stare at her. That sounds ideal. Artoria didn't respond to him, content to leave the conversation to end abruptly. The black dragon remained silent for a moment as he watched her depart. Tell a call, I shall return soon, he called out, giving a single beat of his wings and hurling himself into the air like a missile, with a booming sound to match his sudden takeoff. Torin remained silent, watching as the group that Torni led slowly started to disappear into the horizon. It was still morning and, therefore, light enough that he could watch their forms get further and further away from them. It changed nothing in his heart, perhaps making his intrusive and defeatist thoughts grow in intensity. It was very likely that this would be the final time that many here would ever lay eyes upon their children or their spouses. Win or lose, it was inevitable that some would die. Torin knew that. He knew that, which is why he had wanted to never enter this situation in the first place. Perhaps it made him look all the more fool that he underestimated the stubborn nature of these Norsemen. Or perhaps underestimated their capacity for stupidity, even when he explained to them on numerous occasions that if they continued on this path they would meet a painful and violent end. They would not hear wisdom. Brynjar had vouched for him when he had first appeared, all but begging him to take up the reins of being their leader. And yet, when the most dire hour fell upon them, they ignored his commands and his wisdom. It was beyond vexing for him, bordering on disrespectful. If they would ignore his commands as their leader so readily when the moment struck them, then there had never been a point in being their leader in the first place. He could have become a mere defender. But he had made the foolish mistake of defaulting to his attitude as a chieftain. He'd conned them from their previous encounters with wyverns and aided Cider in slaying the scouting parties. That alone had been enough for them to warrant his growth into the position, and he, fool that he was, had taken it. Because he didn't want to see another tribe reduced to mere ash by vile serpents. Yet, here he was, witnessing it all over again. Shifting on his feet, he turned his body sideways on and gave one final glance to the disappearing caravan before his attention fell upon the remaining warriors. All 68 of them. He committed the number to memory. They set out with 68. He would remember their names and faces all. That would make it easier to commemorate the dead. They were all assembled in front of the man wearing naught but leather small cloths, golden metal boots and bracers, a long red cape and enclosed helmet with a fur plume moving up the center. His body itself was quite muscular with clear red lines painted onto his skin. Perhaps some manner of war paint? He was clearly a warrior and a commanding one at that, considering his voice boomed out far enough that Torin could hear him from a distance. Able to catch every word the man spoke with clear ease and even feeling the power he put into each of his sentences. The man was clearly a leader of some capacity, or one who was used to commanding others. "You there," the painted man boomed, pointing a finger towards Torin. "Come with the others, all shall partake before the march commences." Torin raised an eyebrow behind his helmet. Involving both humans and servants, to her credit, it appeared as though the Chaldean chieftain was present as well. In an activity? At the very least it would give the impression that no one side was excluded from the other. He could grasp the concept simply enough. The painted man seemed to be growing impatient if the narrowed white orbs through the helmet were any indication. Torin eventually nodded his head, turning to face the man in full and walked towards the gathering of warriors. Men and women, young and matured. All were assembled in a clean row. He moved around to the front, a gap being left for him alongside the other Chaldeans, his own position being directly next to Cider Cu. "Excellent," the painted man boomed, clapping his hands together. "You shall all be in for a long march. But it requires focus, tempering of your muscles and control of your stamina." Each sentence was punctuated by him slamming a fist into his chest. "Which means that every single one of you must march in line with every other. None shall be left behind and none shall arrive to battle unfatigued." He stopped in front of Chief Olga, looking down at her in an almost pointed manner. The woman bristling seemed to elicit some sort of pleased reaction from him, if the pleased chuckle was any indication. "That is a fierce scowl you have," he praised, pointing a finger at her. "If you can maintain that fiery look at the end, then I shall be impressed." He turned around and walked past her. "You shall all refer to me as Lancer. I shall see to it that each and every one of you can fight hard enough that when the time comes to die, you shall do so on your feet and not on your backs." Torin would prefer they not die at all. The Norse? They gave quiet cheers at his words, seemingly incensed by them. For the first activity, Lancer turned around to face them. "You shall stretch. You shall extend those muscles in your legs as far as they can allow. Then you will ignore whatever protests they offer and keep on pushing. You shall force the weakness from your body and replace it with strength." He roared at them, spreading his arms wide and, whether by accident or by design, flexed the muscles in his arms. "Repeat after me." He leaned over, folding his body forwards until it was at a 90-degree angle while his legs remained perfectly straight and touched the tips of his boots. The gripped the area around the toes tightly before he leaned back up. "Do not stop until I tell you," he ordered. Casting a glance from the corner of his eye, he stared in silence as Olga's fingers were resting inches above her toes. The woman's face was scrunched up in effort as she continued to push herself down. "Take that ridiculous coat off first," Lancer all but ordered her as he gazed ahead, not even looking at her. Despite that, there were few others that he could possibly be speaking to. Olga paused, her eyes widening and her lips drawing themselves into a tense line as she snapped her head up and glared at the Lancer. Why you want me to take this off in the freezing cold? Cold? Lancer scoffed, turning to face her and waving a hand to himself. Do you see me adorning myself in petty little cloths to protect myself from the elements? He paused and gestured around to those behind her. What of these men? They have no access to magical equipment or anything of the like. They are making themselves warm with nothing but animal fur and fabric. He pointed at her. That coat also restricts your movement. It is a crutch you should be free of. And then what? What good am I possibly going to be if I freeze to death? What good are you going to be if you show up to battle exhausted and unable to stand? Lancer pressured her, turning to face her. You wish to stand with these men? Then be not a burden upon them. Be the one whom they rely upon for advice and guidance. He spread his arms wide. You are a leader, lead through example. Olga stared at him in silence for a few moments. Her jaw rolled from side to side and looked as though she wanted to say something. Eventually her features darkened. Without making a single sound, she grabbed the coat by the zip at the front and virtually tore it down to the base, roughly pulling the coat from her body and throwing it into the snow. Her attire beneath consisted of a woolen orange jumper and presumably a shirt beneath it if the black collar poking through the neck of the warmer layer was any indication. As if to try and prove her point, she leaned down and was able to get a little further than last time, but still was stopped just shy of touching her toes. Lancer stared at her in silence, his helm briefly glancing towards the coat before focusing back on the woman. Walking towards her, he pressed his hand onto her back and then pushed her down a little further. Olga made a strained gasp as her back was bent further than it had ever done so before. Is this the limit of your prowess? Lancer demanded in a judging voice. Is this all your glares can manage? Is your spirit so flimsy to be bested by something as trivial as this? Well, he stepped back, dropping down and placing his hands on his knees. Well, show me the passion in your heart. You claim to be a master, a leader of men. He pointed past her to the Norse, most of whom had already touched their toes and were now looking at them with not so veiled curiosity. With a pointed finger, you intend to lead them to fight dragons. Why yes. Olga managed to gasp out as she strained herself further down, the tips of her fingers wiggling as they approached her feet. Really? Lancer roared. How can you face a dragon in battle if you cannot even touch your toes? Olga's face burned bright red, either through rage or embarrassment. It was impossible to tell, as she continued to strain herself. Touch your toes? Lancer demanded, shouting at her with enough force to have her flinch. This is your first battle. Face your own limits and shatter them. Grind them into dust and march over them. Forget they exist. Defeat your body? Let your spirit roar. With a final strangled gasp, Olga's fingers touched her shoes and then stretched past them and curled underneath her boots. Marvelous, Lancer boomed, leaning back and sounding as though he was grinning madly beneath his helmet. Now remain like this for 5 minutes. Wah! Olga made to look up, only for Lancer to snap at her. Your feet are your life. Do not let them slip from your grasp. Olga hurriedly grabbed them again. As I was saying. Lancer looked away from her and to the others. You shall all maintain this pose until I say otherwise. Then, he trailed off and inclined his head back ever so slightly. Now Torin was convinced he was grinning. Then the training begins. This is gonna suck. See, you whispered next to him. Lass should have some fun though. What in the shit? Torin blinked, turning to the caster and then similarly blinking once as he stared at the men further along the line. Tarkus had leaned down far enough that he had wrapped both hands around his boots with his legs still straight. As if sensing their gaze, Tarkus looked up and to the side to see both Torin and Cu staring at him. The knight released one of his feet and raised his hand. Lancer smacked him in the back of his head for his trouble. Do not release them. Yes, sir, Tarkus hurriedly replied as he gripped his feet yet again. Good form, Lancer praised as he walked past him. However, this only serves to convince me that such trifling exercise do not test you to your limits. He added on, his tone growing more serious. Therefore, I shall see how far your flexibility can truly take you before you struggle. He trailed off, looking the knight up and crossing his arms over his chest, then looked over the top of him to the other Norse. I do not recall telling you to stop. The people who had been watching Olga hurriedly went back to touching their toes. Only a few had difficulty, but for the most part it was an easy feat for them. I see, I see. Lancer nodded his head as he looked over them. So that is where we are at, is it? Excellent. Then, once these 5 minutes are up you shall deliver me 100 push-ups. People stared at him. No, Lancer looked left and right before shaking his head. Worry not, I shall perform them with you. Torin caught a glimpse of Olga from the corner of his eye once again. He didn't think she could look that pale. Her head pulled itself up and stared at the man. Oh, 100? She croaked out. Are you? I am the embodiment of training, Lancer boomed before she could finish, presumably questioning his sanity. Which means whether this land be hot or cold, warm or wet, burning or frozen, you shall train your body to its absolute limit. He stamped his food down. The movement was subtle but gave enough of a thrum across the snow that it punctuated his sentence. Therefore, Lancer looked back at the director. I am only as determined as you are. If you cannot match my level of commitment, then give up and vanish to the corners of this camp. He narrowed his eyes. Well? Olga fell silent, turning her head sharply back to her feet and her hands tightening their hold on her shoes. Excellent, excellent, Lancer applauded, but this is still the warm-up. Do not expend all your energy in one go. There is much to do. Then we will march. He turned to Torin. You came from a town a few miles from here. Yes. Then I expect you to be able to march back there within the next couple hours. That managed to get a reaction from Torin. Excuse me. His helm shifted in disbelief. That was a half day. Under a storm and carrying wounded, Lancer dismissed. I have seen the report. I see no wounded here. Only warriors. And warriors can march with their spirits as fuel. He looked out across the Norse. Are you not warriors? Can you not do your gods proud? A few cries were his response. Then you will march back to your homes with grins on your faces and fires in your heart. Torin was still silent. Was this Chaldea populated with people like this? That was a terrifying thought in itself. A single swing of his arm was all it took to shatter the tree at its base. Wood splintered and launched itself across the area. The tree collapsed down, breaking the already weakened trunk and groaning as it started to teeter over onto its side. Calamate's clawed hand clamped down into the wood, sharpened fingers punctured into the body and held it in place for a few seconds before he stepped around it and turned his body to let the tree fall onto his shoulder. The black dragon gave barely a grunt before he shifted his position and started to walk with the large wooden plant on his back in the direction of the growing pile. His makeshift wood cutting had already claimed him a dozen trees, all with thin spiky branches and strange needle-like leaves growing from it. Without a sound, he shifted the tree from his shoulders and dropped it onto the pile. When he was confident he had collected enough, he'd send a message to Akal and ask her to send some children towards him to collect them. His lip turned down, his shoulders tensed and his hands clenched into fists. That feeling again. The thought of commanding another being to his will was something he still had trouble comprehending, and yet both Akal and Artoria had given the impression that it was something that could be done both willingly and unwillingly. Submitting your own self to the use of another being purely because they might be stronger than you? What was strength measured in? Physical prowess, height, intelligence, appearance? If disparity had confirmed anything, it was that he was different from his kin and they were different from him. In fact, he could see the differences amongst his own wyvern siblings already. Some were more physically capable than others, they had established their own order. He'd tried to prevent it where he could, but it would emerge with each new generation that Akal bred. Was it something to do with them personally? Did they just seek out the strongest being and submit to them? Was that how it worked for humans as well? Except, that was wrong too. The round table was one without hierarchy. All who sat upon it were peers to one another, not lords and servants. I might have been king, but as a knight I was their equal and they were mine. The words of Artoria rung within his head. The king reigned above the knights, but as a knight she was their equal? That was, she was both their equal and their superior. How did that operate? How did it function? Why did it function then? Camelot, the kingdom of knights governed by Artoria. He wanted to learn more of it, and yet he feared if he did, he might seek to copy it. That was not worthy of him. He needed something more than that. More than a simple replica of human achievements. Something for dragons and dragons alone. He reached up to his chest, hand falling atop the scales where his heart resided. Except, was he even a dragon anymore? He was, in part. But he wasn't a complete dragon. He was perhaps closer to Artoria in terms of existence. The grip of humanity dwelt within him, and yet it did not feel like he was weaker as a result. Nor did it feel like it was something hideous or like a chain. It just felt. He had perspective, understanding. He could see things that other dragons might miss. Try as he might to abandon that thought, it just wouldn't go away. He was different from other dragons. Trying as hard as he might to ignore that fact, it was simply impossible to do so. He wasn't like his siblings, not totally. He was more dragon than human, but he still had the essence of humanity within him. His dark scales and the blackness in his flames was proof of that. Yes, a call had guided humans on the path of becoming dragons for longer than he could imagine. Which meant that if humans could become dragons, they were indeed equal in some capacity. So, did his kingdom have to be for just dragons? His mind fell silent as he considered his options, then his eyes closed. No, humans might well have been able to become dragons, thus making them an equal, but that did not mean they could coexist. The history of both worlds proved as much. Dragons might have existed in some other kingdoms, but only as pets. Never once thought of as equals. Calamate had to prove dragons were equal to humans, both to himself and to the wyverns. Which meant that they had to build something of their own, something that could rival any other human kingdom. So that meant it had to be free of humans, not because he hated them. He was jealous of the chance they had gotten, that was simply it. He was jealous and he wanted the chance to do it. But was that all he wanted? Was he doing this just because he was envious of what humans had accomplished? No, though that was part of the reason, it wasn't all of it. He wanted something for himself and for his people. He would carry their future on his own shoulders if he had to, just so they could have a kingdom of their own. A chance of there. He froze, an icy chill gripped his spine and flooded through his limbs. That scent. This feeling. This presence. Something drummed within his heart, guidance to something. Something within his soul called out into the expanse and it received an answer. His head snapped in the direction his soul was calling out to him. His eyes widened and he turned his body. An emotion he couldn't comprehend ran through his mind. He had to find it. He had to find that feeling. Sigurd noticed it first. His head sharply turned to the direction of Alsana when both her and her mount suddenly flinched and then stopped moving. He felt trepidation slip into his mind. Giving a side glance to Gordon, he nodded once to the man and then walked on ahead. Moving past his confused countrymen who seemed to be feeling no small amount of anxiety at the fact they had suddenly stopped moving. "Don't worry," Sigurd assured them as he moved past, giving them a cool nod of the head and as reassuring an expression as he could manage. His aura seemed to pacify the worst of the reactions as he closed in on the smoky black tiger. "Lady Alsana?" Sigurd called up to her as he came up on her right. "Is all well?" The dark-haired woman was staring ahead of them, her eyes slightly wide and her posture stiff. The tiger didn't look any better, their body was tense and looked ready to bolt at any moment. Their hairs were raised and their lips pulled back to reveal their fangs in full. The tiger shifted their body, widening their stance ever so slightly and lowering themselves as they stared ahead. "Lady Alsana?" Sigurd called out again, a little louder and with more urgency in his voice this time. He felt his own hands tightening and his form tensing up. Her reaction was more akin to panic, and as a caster she likely had better senses than all of them put together. Especially with her own special form of divinity, which means she might have sensed something. "Him?" Alsana jolted, turning her head down to find Sigurd looking up at her in concern. Her changed and turned more tense than it had been moments ago. There is something approaching us." Sigurd looked up, his brows drawing together. "A servant?" "I believe so, yes," she confirmed with a nod of her head, then moved her hands towards her chest and pressed against her skin above her heart. "However, this servant, they reached out to me." Sigurd squinted at her for a brief moment before his eyes widened. "They have a link with you, don't they?" he quizzed, ignoring her look of surprise and instead questioning further. "They know where we are, don't they?" Alsana hesitated for a few moments, then gave a single and silent nod of the head. "They know I am here, that much I can confirm," she whispered quietly, just loud enough that she was certain Sigurd could hear her. "As for when they will arrive, I do not know." The saber closed his eyes. "Do you know? Perhaps one of my sisters." Alsana pondered for a moment. then turned her head around and looked behind them. Her expression turned troubled. But if it is one of them, then I know not how they shall react. We were not of like mind, and our only relation with one another was through our father. Sigurd turned his head to look behind as well, staring at the swirling cloud of snow that separated them from the outside world. With a wave of his hand, the pale green crystalline sword manifested in his grasp, sharpened handle guard comfortably folding over his knuckles. Nodding to Alsana once, he shifted his body and walked back the way he had come. When Gordon caught sight of him, and the sword in his hand, he tensed up and similarly started to reach for the weapon on his back. Sigurd gave a single silent nod of his head, prompting Gordon to unsheath the sword from his back and draw it to his side, planting it in the snow and dropping his voice into a low whisper. "Are we to expect trouble?" "Perhaps," Sigurd whispered back to him as he approached, still staring at the storm wall behind them. "Though they have a clear link with the Lady Alsana, it is causing her divinity to reach out." He paused for a moment. "It is strange to see. Like magnets being drawn together, pulling the pair of them to one another. She thinks it is one of her sisters." Gordon pointedly looked at the sword in Sigurd's hands and then to the man once again. "Yes, Lady Alsana said they had little in the way of relations with one another." He explained easily, so for one to be approaching somewhat swiftly. Gordon wordlessly nodded his head, then jerked it over his shoulder. "They approach from behind?" Another nod of the head. Gordon turned around, grasping the sword with both hands and hunching his body forwards. "I was never any good at dialogue, so I shall leave it to you." He paused for a moment. "I hope that is no concern?" "Not at all." Sigurd chuckled lightly. "We all have our strengths and weaknesses. However, I always fancied myself more of a warrior, if I were to speak plainly." Gordon hummed in response, then resumed his weight. Sigurd looked over his shoulder to the Norse. "Keep moving forwards. Tell Lado and Eric what we are doing, but for them to not approach just yet." He got murmurs in response before the march resumed. Then he felt it. The presence, that unmistakable sense that he would never forget. "Dragon," he voiced aloud almost as soon as he felt it. He saw Gordon tense up at his side but maintain his ground. That was commendable. Dragons were fearsome foes, and to battle one took great courage. The fact he showed both apprehension but didn't voice his fears lent credence to his warrior ways. The pair of them waited for nearly a minute before they watched something push its way through the wall of snow, stepping out into the dome. Standing over 3 meters tall, pitch black and with an arrow-shaped head. A single diamond-shaped orange-colored gem rested upon their sloped forehead. Within the center of the gem was a single black pupil that seemed to give it the impression it was like an eye. The horns upon the top of the head curled inwards. A larger pair followed by a smaller inner pair. The head turned, revealing bright red orbs on either side which narrowed as they focused on Sigurd and then on Gordon. "Flamekin," they growled in a low and guttural voice, wholly befitting of their appearance. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Chapter 130. The worst answer to the world's oldest question. Dead silence followed the utterance of the words. The tension between the two groups was thick enough that it could have passed as fog, made worse by the fact that neither side was rushing to attack the other. The quiet stretched on for seconds, but for Calamate, Sigurd and Gordon it might as well have been for hours or days. Each group ready in the event that the other made the first move. Their limbs were primed, like springs ready to leap into action. Sigurd was already looking the human-looking dragon over carefully and considering his chances. They were large, much larger than him, and the feeling that they gave off meant they were likely able to generate more magical energy than he could. However, they were still a dragon. Graham was going to be his key instrument if it came to blows. He would have to go for the joints and limbs. The body looked heavily armored, and he presumed the enemy servant could produce quite insane feats of strength. Either rivaling him or perhaps exceeding him. Loath as he was to admit it, Gordon was the weak link in this situation. Through no fault of his own, but in terms of raw power they were both exceeded. At least individually. As a team they could split the attention of this servant between the two of them and try to prevent one or the other from being overwhelmed. His daggers were going to have to come into play. Another thing to consider. Flight. Their appearance was heavily influenced by their dragon blood, but whether that meant they could bodily transform themselves and fly was something he needed to consider. If they could, then he would have to worry about them gaining distance and height. Sigurd could assume nothing about the capabilities of this servant, a dragon-looking being as a servant, that still surprised him, and couldn't afford to rush in blindly on the belief that because they were a dragon he could win. He wasn't certain of that. He barely recalled his own battle with Fafnir, and this servant would be just as bad but for different reasons. Not least of all because they might be more than capable of matching him in hand-to-hand combat. Their smaller size would make them faster than Fafnir, perhaps not as fast as him but definitely more so than the dragon he had slain. Then there was the central eye upon its head. That gave him the greatest pause. His crystallized wisdom allowed him to see it for what it truly was, and it was something that concerned him deeply. A mystic eye. A genuine mystic eye upon a dragonkind, and one that wasn't low in rank either. A dragon was dangerous enough. A dragon with the form of a human even more so because of their adaptability. A dragon with a mystic eye with an unknown effect thrown into the mix? This was already proving to be a challenging battle, and he hadn't so much as made a single move. There was no way of knowing if the mystic eye had already come into effect or not. The sheer quantity of the magical energy the servant exuded by just standing in front of him made it impossible to discern if it was doing much more than existing. If it came to blows, he'd have to aim for that eye immediately before it could activate. His magic resistance would do nothing to stop it from affecting him. That brought about another problem. He didn't turn around, but he could feel the eyes of the Norse standing not too far from him upon the back of his head. If he was fighting in an open battle, he could use his abilities to a far greater extent. He couldn't afford to be too destructive though. One wrong move and he could end up killing the very people he was trying to protect. That handicap likely didn't extend to this being. They could afford to go all out, and between trying to fight them and protect the people, it could very quickly turn into an uphill battle. After the seconds dragged on, Sigurd started to feel something creep into his mind. Apprehension. The longer he looked at the draconic servant, the more he could understand. There was something within it that was more than dragon blood. He could see that same wisp of divinity that was hostile to all other types. It was grafted onto them, not something they were born with but something that had filled a gap. There had been a hole where a soul would have resided, and that divinity was filling it in. It might very well be what was allowing this dragon to manifest as a servant. Not that dragons didn't have souls, but they were more akin to walking concepts. Fafnir being the sin of avarice made manifest, so this divinity was doing something to change this dragon from their original self. That was likely what Alsana had sensed. They'd wandered too close to this one while she had been exerting herself and tapping into her own divinity. The two had called out to each other subconsciously, the pull of their souls. He could see it, just barely through his wisdom. The flicker and flutter of the essence that was aiming past him and further up the line. Through all of this, Sigurd couldn't help but come up with a single thought. Why haven't they attacked yet? Unbeknownst to him, the words were echoed within the dragon's head as well. At the very least, buried beyond all the other emotions swirling through his head right now. Calamate could barely restrain himself from throwing his fists at the two before him. The second the scent of flame kin had filtered into his nose, he nearly lost himself to rage. Images of burning archtrees and his brethren's corpses flooded his mind before he quenched them down. He needed to be better than that. He needed to act out of a more level-headed mind than out of pure anger. He'd lived enough of his life with just rage, burning everything before him without any further regard for what he was doing. He needed to be better this time around. He needed to do more than just destroy and kill. His hands clenched themselves into fists, his sharpened claw-like fingers puncturing into his palms and drawing dark sickly blood from them. The sharp pain brought him out of his focus as he reassessed the two before him. They hadn't struck him yet. Why hadn't they done that? In the past there had been no hesitation before any of the flame kin would lash out and attack him. Yet these two remained still as statues. Even as the seconds dragged on, he could feel that their existences were similar enough to his own and Artoria's. They could have charged him the second he walked through the cloud of snow. They hadn't, and he wasn't sure what to make of that. Were they waiting for him to make the first move? His eyes flickered between the two in front of him once again. The one on the right was wearing dark-colored armor, A pale violet-colored cape was draped over his shoulders and a series of metal spikes ran across the top of the fabric. His face was stern. A flash of recognition shifted through those eyes before they narrowed again. Something that struck him as odd as he didn't recognize this flamekin. Dark gray hair and strange objects on his eyes. He would call them gray hair until he knew their name. What drew his attention most of all was the sword, his eyes drifting down from the man's face and to the sword in his hands. Crystalline, pale green in coloration and almost glowing. Then he noticed the smaller blades around the man's hip, made of a similar material to the sword. Crystal knives, he muttered out in understanding, then looked back at the man. Clarity dawned upon him. The news that a call had given him and the words of Artoria as she relayed the fate of some of their southern siblings. The Dragon Slayer. The Flamekin tensed himself, grip tightening on his sword. You know me? Only through seeing the aftermath of your battles. Calamate admitted, then gave a single nod towards him. You did that by yourself? Then looked to the Flamekin companion. Around the same height and wearing a more simple set of armor. Blue fabric draped over a steel set of armor. White fur across the shoulders and a fully concealing metal helmet. They would be steelheads. His eyes swept over them in case he missed anything else, then he saw the blade. He almost threw himself at them then and there, just for the blade they held. Once again holding himself back, they hadn't attacked him yet. Beyond that, though he held the same blade as the knight who slaughtered his people, they clearly were not him. The smell and taste was all wrong. They hadn't attacked him, at least not directly, so he would show them the same courtesy and not attack them. Though the Dragon Slayer had killed some of his siblings, his goal at the time had been radically different. He was setting the country ablaze and destroying rather than creating. He didn't know if they truly opposed him or were acting out of self-preservation when his siblings had come. There was every chance they would accept his argument and leave when he presented it to them. Though a call and Artoria had made it clear to him the Dragon Slayer would oppose him regardless, he still needed to know why they would do that. His aim wasn't malicious or evil, so why would they oppose it in the first place? That is not yours. He growled out instead of attacking, shifting his posture ever so slightly to bring his full attention upon the Flamekin. The response from the two before him was almost immediate, their bodies shifted and their legs repositioned themselves. Calamate halted his movements, eyes flickering back to the pair and watching as they ceased their own moves. The standoff resumed. Steelhead stilled, appearing more alarmed by the words than by the shifting of the dragon. His hands tightened their grip on the sword but they didn't respond. The confidence in your words suggests you know whom the blade originally belonged to. The first Flamekin spoke up. Calamate's attention returned to him and noticed a more contemplative look in his eyes this time around, but no less wary of his being here. And I know of no dragon that has taken an appearance such as that. Perhaps in relation to the essence of your being? Calamate shifted. They knew about that. How did the Flamekin know that? He could sense no true link between the two of them beyond the stench of dragon blood clinging to that sword of his. Calamate knew for a fact that neither Gray Hair nor Steelhead were the ones who had called out to him. How do you? He trailed off. No, you weren't the one I sensed. He stated a second later, taking another sniff of the air. The two of them were Flamekin but at the same time they were not. The one in blue and steel smelt more familiar to him. The presence of the light ones permeated through their body and yet it wasn't at all like the smell that he knew of. More than that, it wasn't completely overwhelming like the Knights of Metal. It was as if they had been exposed to the light as he had been exposed to the dark. The first one, holder of the crystal sword, smelt different to anything he had encountered before. The scent of light was an entirely different texture, the taste was wrong. Not a lightkin he was familiar with then, perhaps one of those from this world? It did not matter either way. You're both human. Calamate declared, eyes flashing between the two of them, or close enough. Holders of the light kin but still beings of dark. Silence stretched on again. You have not yet attacked me, Calamate declared, looking between them. The same could be said for us. Gray Hair spoke slowly, not moving but focusing completely upon him. You tracked us down and then seemed surprised to see us. Given what your brethren are currently doing, I am more surprised you have yet to strike at us. Calamate pondered the statement for a moment. I wasn't tracking you, he replied. Not you personally. I was expecting something else. I haven't attacked because you haven't attacked. Gray Hair briefly flicked his eyes over to Steelhead and then back to him. And if we are to remain cordial, keeping our weapons to ourselves while we speak, then I will not do battle with you. He responded to the pair, and shall reciprocate your talks with my own. How long that remains the case is up to you. It was a clear declaration of intent. If they didn't try to fight him, he wasn't going to fight them. More of a non-aggression pact than anything else, although it was something subject to change. You came here. The man with the crystal sword broke him from his musings, stepping forwards and narrowing his eyes, and are allied with the wyverns burning this country. Calamate nodded. You command them. I am the one who guides my brothers and sisters. Calamate corrected quickly, his voice tensing at the mention of commanding them once again. They were not slaves who bent to his will. He refused to believe that about them. He would not hear of it. I show and they follow. I see. The expression of the knight darkened, his eyes briefly flickering behind him for a moment, towards the crowd of humans, and then back to Calamate before they narrowed suspiciously. In that case, where's your family? He quizzed, slowly pulling his sword from the ground. I came alone. Calamate declared, seeing no reason to lie to them. I sensed something familiar, something that called out to me. His clawed hand rose up, pressing the flat of his palm over his heart. I can still hear its call now. A gentle pull towards peace. He lowered the hand, it called and I followed. For what purpose? The Blue Knight spoke for the first time, his tone clipped and demanding. Calamate bristled slightly at the tone before he noticed something, slowly shifting his head to look behind him and then back at the humans once again. Their position was all wrong. They were heading away from him. The tracks he had spotted all but confirmed it. For what purpose do you leave? Calamate asked, tilting his head ever so slightly. My home lies that way. He turned his body side on, pointing to the border of the blizzard and then looked between the two smaller servants. Yet you are not heading that way, you instead travel away. He paused for a moment, considering the motives behind such an action before his tone shifted to become more puzzled. The words of Artoria and a call drifted back through his mind. Do you not intend to oppose me? That prompted looks of utter bafflement from the pair of them. Gray Hair jolted in surprise before he frowned heavily and Steelhead recoiled as if struck before his stance tightened. The human then pointed his right arm at him. Do you truly feel the need to ask such an absurd question as you burn the lands of the humans here and set your brethren upon them like savage beasts? He all but snarled. It is only natural that we would oppose you. But you don't. Do you not want to know why? Calamate pressured further, looking between the two of them. Will you not ask me why? Gray Hair gave a tight frown. His eyes sharply glanced in the direction of Steelhead before they fell back upon him. You would answer truthfully? I do not lie. Calamate denied instantly. If you ask, I shall explain, but I would ask you to explain why you do not travel to face me. Were you not aware where I was? No, Gray Hair shook his head. Once this task was completed, we fully intend to oppose you. It was merely a case of leading those less capable to safety. Calamate frowned. Less capable? He muttered to himself in confusion, released a slight growl. What does capability matter in this situation? He paused before he grunted and shook his head to dismiss the thought for a moment. Something else intrigued him. So, you flee from me to lead those who will not fight from the battle? Yes. The dragon shifted on one foot, looking over the top of Gray Hair towards the humans behind him and narrowed his eyes. They did not look any less capable than the humans he had seen before. There looked to be no real difference at all. So why weren't they allowed to partake in the battle? Did they not want to? So some would oppose him and some wouldn't. His eyes landed on the distant shape. Behind all the humans or in the midst of them. Black smoke surrounded its form. Glowing red eyes focused upon him and something sat atop it. He felt the pull grow stronger the longer he stared. Before he could take a single step, Gray Hair spoke again. You said you would speak truthfully? Then I shall ask again. What is your purpose? His attention was dragged away from the shape and to the pair of them. He allowed it because there was something wrong with this pull. It was familiar but at the same time it was subdued. His feeling was much, much weaker than when he last experienced it. The shape and size was all wrong as well. More than that, the sensation did not even draw him to the giant beast of dark smoke but to something else. I'm building a kingdom of dragons. Calamate spoke casually, the words delivered so suddenly and so calmly that neither of the two servants registered the sentence for a few moments before they found themselves staring at the dragon in silence for a few moments. Steelhead spoke first. Is that truly your intention? Yes. Calamate nodded once. If you are removing humans from this land, then I have no cause to oppose you. He added on, shifting his posture back to its original one and looking between the two of them. It makes my role much simpler. Gray Hair narrowed his eyes. You wish to claim this entire land for your kingdom, you say? Yes. It's more convenient, as it was the land I was summoned in. Calamate replied simply. He turned side on and started to pace back and forth in front of the pair. His posture was still tense, ready in the event of an altercation between the two groups. But if you will not oppose me, he trailed off. No, you will oppose me, but you are leading those who won't from this land first? Why? Gray Hair paused. What do you mean, why? Calamate hummed to himself for a few moments as he worked to compose his words. I'm not understanding why you would oppose me to begin with. Steelhead bristled. You ask why we would stand against you after the slaughter you have been conducting for the past weeks. That was reason enough, he supposed. From their perspective, he was working to kill their race systematically. If I were to allow you to lead those who won't oppose me from this land without fear of harm befalling them, would you still oppose me? He asked after a moment of thought, looking between the two of them for an answer. Yes. Gray Hair responded first, his expression remaining stern-faced. Even if you had not killed a single human here, we would have opposed you. Why? Because it is simply that your existence, your actions, pose a threat to humanity as a whole. We won't expand beyond this country. That alone is more than enough to jeopardize human history. Gray Hair cut him off, closing his eyes and shaking his head. Although for the simple reason that to achieve this goal you will kill all who stand against you. Though that in itself is not strange. It is just that we have been called forth to oppose you. He responded simply, my personal feelings on the matter aside. And what are your personal feelings on the matter? Gray Hair frowned. The act of creating a kingdom for your people to live is not something that I would consider evil or malicious. He responded with after a moment. And if you truly do not intend to kill those who don't oppose you, then I have little quarrel with you on that front. However, would you allow them to remain? No, why? Because it needs to be a kingdom for dragons. The presence of humans would only serve to alter the end result. Calamate explained, it needs to be something that just dragons have created. Could it really be called a kingdom of dragon if humans have influenced it from beginning to end? I do not believe so. All the same, you would force these people from homes they have lived in all their lives. Gray Hair countered, from the realm of their ancestors, the land of their gods. There is history here that predates your arrival by millennium and much more than will develop from these roots. Even if your end goal is something that is hardly evil, the methods by which you are trying to accomplish it are doing harm to humanity. That is simply the way it is. Calamate remained silent, his head turning down slightly. So, you oppose me because I will cause harm to humans through my mere existence, rather than anything else? That would be if you hadn't killed thousands. Gray Hair added on, his features hardening. However, as you have indeed killed many in pursuit of this goal, then it stands to me to be someone who can protect those who remain and ensure they do not lose their home. You have killed many and forced even more into exile. These are not crimes I can ignore. Especially as this is also my home. That made much more sense to him, opposing him because this was his home. He could understand that much, their reasoning was without fault. Attacking someone's home and not expecting to be attacked back because of it would be foolish. He knew as much when he attacked the forests that those humans lived within and their spirit. Even if they had struck first, it was folly for them to believe he would not strike back though he had been intending to do so. It was besides the point though. He was the aggressor in this situation and these humans were those who would oppose him, but they were also surrounded by those who wouldn't oppose him. Why have you not yet attacked me, in that case? Steelhead shifted slightly. Excuse me. I am the one who leads the dragons. If you oppose me, then you should kill me here and now. He explained to both of them, stopping his walk and gesturing at his chest. You will not get another opportunity for some time. The longer I live, the more of my kingdom I shall build. If you want to stop that, Then it is best to kill me now, but you don't because it would. He trailed off, eyes narrowed and looked beyond them once again. It would endanger the humans behind you, right? Neither responded, but the way in which both their bodies suddenly shifted indicated that his words had gotten through to them. I'm just saying, but if you oppose me it's easier to fight me now, but I'm trying to understand why you won't. Is it because of bonds? But then that doesn't make sense to me. Calamate frowned heavily. If you are fighting to protect them, then shouldn't they fight to protect you as well? Is that not an equivalent exchange? You oppose me but they don't, yet you all travel in the same group even though you have different goals? He resumed walking. But that's disparity, isn't it? Even if they won't do the same as you, you'll still fight to protect them from me even if they won't protect themselves. Calamate gave a low hum of understanding. If I fight you, they won't fight me, but you know that. If I fight you, then they might die and you don't want that to happen, protecting them when they can't protect themselves. Steelhead grunted. Naturally. That is what it means to be a knight. Calamate finished his sentence, giving a long and thoughtful hum. It is one thing to hear it described, but to see it is another thing. I hadn't expected to, but witnessing it firsthand is, Red eyes closed. No, this is interesting but not what I came for, the call. I heard it within my person and I won't leave until I see them. I need to see them. Steelhead and Gray Hair adjusted themselves, leveling their swords at him. Though your intentions do not appear hostile at this moment, that does not mean they are benign. Gray Hair warned, your admission of being behind this current slaughter is proof of that. No, this conquering of yours is proof of that. You are an enemy to humanity, are you not? A kingdom of dragons and dragons alone. Naturally. Calamate admitted without a moment of hesitation. It will be a kingdom of dragons and for dragons. He waved his hand at them. Do not mistake this. I don't hate humans, it is just I want this land and therefore I want the humans gone. However that occurs is no concern of mine. It's just easier to kill them than remove them. Besides, I don't believe the humans will willingly flee their lands without pressure. The early ones fought to the end. He paused, then once again examined the humans. At least, I thought as much, but humans are not all the same. They are born of disparity, so some will leave and some won't, but I can't know that until I arrive. Another long and curious hum. This is more challenging than I thought. I believed all humans would oppose me, but clearly they won't. How many had he killed who would have otherwise left without the need for bloodshed? This is irrelevant, Steelhead curtly responded. You will not get further than this point. If you came not to start violence, then you may leave for now. If you pressure this further, then we shall come to blows. Calamate looked to Steelhead and then to Gray Hair. He turned his body to face the pair fully, rolling his shoulders. That is unfortunate. I came to find the one who called out and shall not leave before that time. There is something I must understand. Something within me that must be answered. Red eyes narrowed and the glowing gem-like shape upon their foreheads started to thrum with power. And I will not leave until I have those answers. Alsana could feel it pulsating within her very soul. Her spirit was crying out as whatever had arrived was virtually upon them. Whatever it wasn't one of her sisters. She could tell as much by now, even if she hadn't witnessed its arrival, she would be able to tell as much from the feel. The dark that the creature possessed wasn't something it was born with like her, it was something grafted onto them. Forced into their body, whether willingly or not was something she didn't know. It changed nothing though, she watched as the dark creature, her kindred, would occasionally shift its head and gaze in her direction. She felt her hairs stand on end when those glowing red eyes locked onto her own from a distance. Her soul flickered and pulled, almost compelling her to be drawn closer. That was the nature of the dark soul, it sought to be whole once more. But if she did that, she would lose something precious. She would lose something that meant more to her than whatever peace the dark soul would bring. You should smile more, Alsana. Though this kingdom is frozen, there is no reason for your features to be just the same. Besides, I feel as though you would be quite the beauty if you were to smile. She would lose him. She couldn't do that. Her eyes narrowed, watching as the creature squared off with the two knights. It was no longer something that she could put off. This being had called out to her and she had called out to it. If this being of dark wanted to meet her, then that was that. She would meet them as well. Lud. She whispered out her gifted companion's name. The large cat flickered a single ear in response. Stay with the humans. I shall return shortly. The companion remained stationary for a moment, then gave a hesitant growl before it slowly lowered itself to the ground for her. Alsana shifted her position upon its back, dropping down into the snow with her bare feet. Not that she noticed, this cold was nothing compared to the chill of her home. It was almost akin to a warm summer's day. Turning her body towards the direction of the confrontation, she started to walk towards them. Pygmy Alsana. She paused at the voice, looking over her shoulder and seeing the Silver Knight approaching her, his tone awash with confusion. Is there some trouble? The humans would not tell me. I know nothing of fact, Alsana responded, only that a being of dark has arrived, drawn to my soul. Lado shifted his position, of dark, you say? His tone was now more wary. What manner of being are they? That is something I know not, she confessed with some hint of shame. She was a child of the Abyss Father and could not tell what type of being this was. Her sisters would have laughed at this failure, or at least she suspected they would. At least before they then killed her to absorb into themselves. The Silver Knight gave a single grunt of understanding as he shifted the giant hammer upon his shoulders, turning his head towards the direction that Alsana had been preparing to head in before nodding once. Very well, let's go. Be sure to stay behind me, Pygmy Alsana. Lado warned as he stepped around her, should it come to combat, I fear that you might be in for a rather terrible time of it. Alsana wasn't going to argue against that, she was better suited for more magical attacks anyway. Most of the physical combat could be left to Lud or Zalan, in this case it would be Zalan. You have already come this far without warning of battle. Gray Hair spoke in a stern tone as his eyes narrowed. And have expressed no intention of killing those who do not strictly oppose you. Do not break this trend now. Calamate gave a low growl. This is more important than that. I need to know the answer to this question. To what it is that makes me different from my kin. He hunched himself forwards. And if you stand in my way, if those humans behind you stand in my way, then they oppose me and shall be dealt with accordingly. Steelhead and Gray Hair shifted their positions, ready to launch themselves forwards. What have you come here for, my dark kindred? A voice from behind Steelhead and Gray Hair called, prompting the three of them to turn in the direction of the voice. Calamate stiffened as the sensation grew in intensity, that pull grew stronger and stronger. A dark-haired woman stepped out from behind the pair, staring at him with no small amount of shock. It was difficult to tell which of the two of them was more surprised. Suffice to say that neither of them had been expecting the other to look like that, primarily due to experience in dealing with those of the dark before. But that wasn't the complete reason. Calamate was focused on the individual who stood in front of the woman in a protective manner. The screams of his dying brethren. Bolts of lightning tear through scale. Fire swallows the great trees. A doom sweeps the land, his race is slaughtered. The flamed kin of metal with horned helms butcher without hesitation. Calamate's attention was no longer upon the woman, instead fixated upon the Silver Knight. The knight was similarly staring at Calamate with no small amount of shock. His body tensed up and the hammer was removed from his shoulders and swung around in an instant, being threateningly leveled at the dragon. I dare say, that armor of yours is in poor taste. The Silver Knight spoke with a clear edge in his tone. Armor, Calamate growled out. Red eyes narrowed instantly. You. Both parties looked ready to hurl themselves forwards, at least until the woman stepped around the Silver Knight and back into Calamate's line of sight, looking towards him with an expression of apprehension. The black dragon's eyes darted away from the knight for a split second and onto her. Caster, this is no place for. Gray Hair attempted to speak, adjusting his footing to move closer before the dark-haired woman raised her hand to cut him off, not once taking her eyes off the dragon. You forget, I am a queen. The woman's tone was cold. It reminded him of Artoria. That steel of authority which seemed to draw one's attention. If one comes to me, seeking an audience, then I can oblige that request should I so wish to. She lowered her hand. And you have come seeking audience with me, have you not? Calamate nodded his head once, ever so slightly, and looked the woman over more closely. She wasn't what he had been expecting, she was shorter than a call and wasn't as physically impressive either. Despite that, she seemed to hold some difference to her. Something that made her feel as close to him as a call, which meant she was indeed the one he was searching for. This bond, their connection, It wasn't something that could be faked, so they were family in some capacity. You're not who I was expecting. Nor are you. The woman responded quickly but not in a rush. I had expected one of pure dark to have reached for my soul. But you are not pure being, are you? You are something different before the essence latched itself upon your being. I was something. Calamate paused, debating his words as he turned his head skywards. I was something different. I couldn't see as much, I couldn't understand as much. I didn't know as much. It is. I no longer feel as though I walk through water, as though the world turns and I am left behind. My legs are cemented in the planet. I can see the sun rise and fall. I was everlasting and now I am not. The Silver Knight had a sharp intake of breath as he adjusted himself. That is no armor you adorn yourself with. I am Calamate, he stated after a moment, lowering his head and staring at the humans, lordkin and brethren before him. I am the last of our everlasting race, the final dragon who takes to the skies. I am the dragon touched by the abyss, the one who shall strike fear into the hearts of the flamekin. His eyes narrowed. I am ruler of this kingdom, leader of my brothers and sisters. I will guide my people into this new world of hope. I know what you are, flamekin in metal skin. He growled at the night. I know what you have done. What you all did. I know why you are here, to oppose me as your race opposed us in the past. His attention quickly shifted back to the woman. But I need to know. Reaching up, he placed a clawed hand on the center of his chest. Are we? Am I like this because of the influence of the Dark One? He asked in an almost childlike voice. This vision of mine, this dream that I hold, is it my dream or is it the dream of this blackness that took my body? He took a single step forwards, inclining himself down and staring at the woman. I must know. Is what I am the soul or does it come from the me who existed before the dark? The woman remained silent as she stared at him, eventually closing her eyes. If that is all you came for, then I shall answer that question of yours with honesty from one ruler to another. The eyes opened. We are more than what we are born as. I, one born of fear and destined for grief, was seen as someone who could become more. My nature is not what I am. Her head inclined itself ever so slightly. Your nature is what you wish it to be. Whether it comes from the dark or whether it comes from another source, it is what you are. That which you were born as, is not what you must always exist as. Calamate remained silent, listening to her words and lowering the hand to his side. Then, it does not matter where my dream comes from, only that I have it. If that is what you take from my words, then that is what you take from them. The woman responded for a moment. I see. Thank you, sister. Why, excuse me? The woman jolted for the first time during the conversation, her expression shifting from cool and composed to one of genuine surprise for the first time. What did you just call me? We are both beings of the blackness. Calamate responded as though the answer was obvious. So we are family. As I am undoubtedly older than you, you are my sister. That is most certainly not how families are arranged. Ignoring her, Calamate shifted his attention to the knight behind her. One final question before I depart, he announced, his wings already jutting forth from his back at a slow rate so as not to alarm anyone. It is for you, little lightkin. Red eyes narrowed. Why? The Silver Knight was thrown for a loop for a few seconds. Why? Why did you kill us? I have debated it for years, decades, centuries, and I never arrived at an answer. Calamate explained, his voice shifting to confusion. It is not something I understand. We knew nothing of you before you came to the surface. There was no hint of dialogue or anything before you fell upon us in the thousands, every flamekin. Across the entire world we fought you and I don't know why. I believe in an equal exchange. If I am to speak, I would expect someone to speak back to me. If I am to fight someone, I would expect them to fight back, so I must know, what did we do that the equivalent response was the complete extinction of my people? What act was so horrific that the only way to respond to it was to kill us? Why did we have to die? I don't know. Huh? The response from Calamate was so silent that it was barely heard amongst the winds. Despite that, it didn't stop the dragon from shuddering and stepping backwards as if he had been slapped. You what? I do not know. The Silver Knight responded after a silence, shrugging once. I didn't ask. None of us did, we didn't need to. Calamate stared at him in silence. You didn't ask? No, the gods, our gods, gave life to us. We exist for them, we live for them, we fight for them. So when Lord Gwyn commanded us to take to the surface and slay every dragon we could, not a single one of us hesitated or questioned it. The Silver Knight said in a completely toneless voice, as if his words weren't the least bit disturbing to the dragon. There was never any need to. You did not hate us? Hate you? We didn't care much about you. The knight replied with a shrug. At least in the beginning. Sure, some of us started to hate you. Havel hated you for killing his friends. Sir Goff loved killing you because of the thrill of the fight. Sir Ornstein enjoyed honing his skills, and that was that. When we first started, we didn't think about you at all, beyond completing our mission. It was all. Calamate staggered backwards, his right hand came up to cradle his head, and no, you just, wait, we never did anything? Nothing that I knew of. The knight admitted, we just, were merely obeying orders, there was no personal incentive for any of us in the beginning. We just did what was commanded of us. No personal incentive? Calamate quietly replied, lowering the hand from his head. No, we never did anything. We died, we all died, because you were just told to kill us for reasons you don't know. There was never an ideal or an objective, we were killed, for the sake of being killed. The knight remained silent for a few moments before nodding his head. I'm not sure what you expect me to tell you. That was all there was to it. Calamate's arms fell down to his side, blankly staring at the Silver Knight without an essence of emotion within his body. That was all there was to it. His people burn. Lighting peels the scales from their body, screams pierce the air. Calamate heard a ringing in his ears, no longer hearing anything else as he stared at the Silver Knight. At everyone who stood in front of him. His head turned in slow motions as though on a rotor, shifting his gaze across everyone who stood in front of him. He could vaguely see the flame kin making gestures and muffled noises, but nothing else. Bodies are piled high. Mountains of those he knew forever and for mere days. They die and lie there, rotting away as the black miasma sweeps through the land. He gave a single, slow, blink as he comprehended the words. His people didn't die for any reason at all. They were killed, slaughtered and butchered because they could be. That was it. The people who killed them never asked for a reason and never cared to receive one. They just killed because they could kill. Pillars of fire turn the arch trees to ash, the homes shatter and collapse. Dragons scream as they are crushed beneath the falling weights, trapped and left as the knights descend upon them. They hack and slash, breaking away scales with their bare hands to get to the flesh beneath. It's death by 1,000 cuts. The screams go on for hours. There wasn't any reason. It wasn't that they didn't think of dragons as equals, they just didn't think of them as even being on the same ground to begin with. When treating another, there was something to be expected. You fight, they fight back. You talk, they speak. That was how it was. That was how it should be between equals. He killed for the sake of making something better. He fought for the future of his people, and all his brethren knew that. They fought for, they didn't even know. They fought and killed and didn't know why. They killed all his people, his family, and didn't even know why. The screams fall silent, the land is blackened. The trees are stumps, corpses cover the land. There's nothing left. They're all gone, they're all gone. What is gone? Where have they gone? Where is everyone? Why am I alone? What is alone? I don't like this. I don't like this, I don't like this, it's horrible. It's lonely. I hate this. I want to go back. I want it to be like how it was before. Where is everyone? Why have they gone and left me behind? Why can't they take me as well? Just take me, let me be with them again. I don't like this. Calamate was in the midst of the servants before he even registered what he was doing. He couldn't hear anything else beyond the ringing. His hand blazed with yellow flames as it swung towards gray hair. The man widened his eyes and raised the back of the green sword like a shield. His burning fist slammed into it and exploded, sending the man skating across the ground and away from him. The shock coursed through his body, the ringing vanished and he could hear everything once again. Cries of alarm went off, followed by incoherent shouts. Get Lady Alsana back to the camp, Steelhead shouted out, jumping away from him to get some distance. Calamate whirled around. His leg swung up like a hammer and smashed into his gut. The knight bent over the limb and released a single wheezing gasp before he was rocketed away, punching through the snow cloud and out of sight. The impact released a shockwave at the epicenter of the strike. A boom filled his ears as snow flew off in a sphere around his body. He couldn't concentrate on anything, it felt like his chest was burning up. He knew this feeling, this anger. He felt it every time he saw human cities, but this was different. It wasn't envy, it was that hideous feeling he got whenever he had seen things. Anger, he was angry, he didn't care if they opposed him right now. He was going to release all this anger. He staggered back, something punched into his shoulder and caused his body to protest against it. Red eyes snapped down and locked onto it. A small metal handle from one of the glowing knives was stuck in his shoulder, between the plates of armor. Calamate felt it tug and then wrench itself free of his body as it flew back through the air and into the waiting hands of gray hair. The man stared at him with tension as he held two knives in a reverse grip. The sword was nowhere to be seen, but he didn't care right now. Cold winds crashed into his side, nails of ice hammered against his body and forced him to raise his left arm up to shield his face. He didn't care about anything. He was angry and he was going to let go. The left arm burst into flames. Yellow fire poisoned with blackness lashed out as he swung the limb through the air. A tsunami of heat rolled off his body and swept through the snow, lashing out at anything that was in front of him. A wall of ice rocketed up from the ground, halting the flames before they could burn anything more. Calamate roared as he hurled himself forwards. His right arm cocked itself back and then was hurled forwards like a battering ram the moment he was close enough. His knuckles crashed into the icy wall and his efforts were rewarded with a deep shuddering crack as the surface of the wall splintered instantly. With another shunt, he unleashed an explosion from his hand. The detonation ripped through the wall of ice and allowed him to break through. Focusing down on the silver knight that was stood by the dark girl. Gray hair's boot crashed against the side of his head, snapping it to the side and staggering him. The human crouched down on the ground in front of him the moment he landed. Calamide snarled and swung his claws out towards the smaller target. Gray hair ducked down, avoiding the blow and rushing forwards into his space. His arms blurred and Calamate felt his body erupt with pain as the knives slashed through his armor and into his flesh. He staggered backwards, drawing both his arms back on either side and then swinging them forwards. His palms cracked against one another, producing a shockwave that knocked Gray hair off his feet and into a roll. The blast of wind rushed outwards, crashing into the blizzard that surrounded them and ripping through it. The runes fizzled out and dissipated as the thunderous clap tore through the barrier. With Alsana no longer focused on maintaining it, there was little that could be done to preserve its stability from the supercharged clap. Sigurd rolled backwards, his ears still ringing from being right next to the dragon when they clapped. He'd recognized the signs before anyone else had. The moment the dragon, Calamate, all but snapped and was no longer the same individual they had been speaking with earlier. In truth, Sigurd could hardly say it was a surprise. While Leto had most likely told the truth, he couldn't help but feel that was the worst possible thing he could have done at that moment. Hearing that all your people were killed simply because someone else said they had to die and gave no elaboration was never going to sit well with anyone. Personal feelings on the matter aside, it was clear that this was going to become a fight to the death if nothing changed. He cast a quick glance over his shoulders to the people behind him before returning his attention to Calamate. The dragon swung their left arm once again and shattered the remains of the ice barrier that had separated the two, pulling himself through entirely. "Caster!" Sigurd shouted out as he threw the two daggers in the air, soon followed by the remaining two. "Get the people to safety." His arms blurred as the daggers dropped down, at just the right angle as his fists cracked against the base of the weapons and rocketed them forwards like missiles. The daggers struck Calamate along his right leg and upper body. The dragon roared and stumbled forwards before glaring down at the protrusions and then towards him. Sigurd schooled his features and flicked his hand back. The daggers wrenched themselves free of the dragon and returned to himself swiftly, Calamate hurling themselves after them and in his direction. Sigurd ducked down and rolled to the side. A punch aimed at his head swung over the top of where he had been. His eyes widened and he spun himself backwards, Calamate's tail lashing out and crashing into the snow in another effort to catch him off guard. "Ha!" Leto charged in with a roar, dragging his hammer through the snow and attracting the attention of the dragon once again. With a quick grunt, the silver knight spun on his heel and pulled the hammer from the ground and swung it around his body, using his own momentum to give it additional speed before he locked his legs in place and swung up at the dragon. Calamate raised his forearms, the flat of the hammer crashed against his defense and buckled his knees. Sigurd rushed forwards, unclasping the short sword on his belt and slashing along the back of the leftmost leg as he moved past. While remaining on his feet, Calamate pushed the hammer away from his body. His right arm was brought up and swung down like an axe, crashing into Leto's shoulder and eliciting a pained grunt from the knight as they staggered backwards. The dragon charged forwards, pulling his left arm back and swinging it up towards the chest of the retreating servant. Sigurd's knife slashed the wrist upwards. Calamate staggered backwards only for Sigurd to turn in and bury his left knife in the spot beneath the berserker's ribs. Calamate responded by locking on Sigurd and swinging downwards. The knight once again ducked back and avoided the blow, back-pedaling still as Calamate gave chase with wild swings and slashes that were designed to do maximum damage. With a roar, Calamate launched himself into the air with a single beat of his wings. Sigurd's head snapped up, watching the dragon arc through the air before their right leg caught fire and they dropped down, their intention clear as they aimed for him. With a quick boost, Sigurd jumped to the side and tackled Leto to get the pair of them out of the way. Calamate smashed into the ground. The leg released an explosion of fire which washed over the pair and made Sigurd wince from the heat and the nature of the flames themselves. "You almost convinced me," Calamate howled, whirling himself around to face Sigurd and slinging his left arm forwards. A jet of fire streamed forth from his palm in the direction of the knight. Graham manifested in his arms and he rapidly traced runes along the surface of the weapon. A pale barrier extended around both himself and Leto as the flames hit, arcing around the shield and scorching the grounds around them. The dragon advanced on them, snarling all the while, "You had me believing we could be viewed as equals." As he got close enough, he cut the flames out and brought his hands above his head, clasping them together and then swinging them down into the shield. The first strike cracking barrier like glass and straining Sigurd's face. But it just isn't good enough, is. His head whirled around, Gordon charged in with and swung his large greatsword up at the last second. The weapon slashed along Calamate's side, spilling black blood onto the snow and staining it. With a snarl, the dragon spun around and attempted to land a backhand onto the knight. Gordon ducked down, dragging his hand through the snow and rapidly muttering under his breath as he did so before kicking off and into a roll to avoid a downwards punch. The snow erupted with spears of ice, the primordial runes responding to the command of the chanter and spearing thin icicles into the gaps between the armor joints. Calamate growled and ripped his legs free of the trap without even registering the pain. As he turned to face Gordon, something crashed into the back of his head. Eyes widened as pain coursed through his body. He felt his balance go and was soon toppling over and landing face first in the snow. Dragging his head up, he managed to catch a glimpse of the Silver Knight landing in front of him and spinning back around with the giant hammer, the weapon heading straight towards his head. Too slow to reach, Calamate could do nothing but tank it. The blow snapped his head back and launched him from the ground and into the air. As he spanned through the sky, he spread his wings wide in an attempt to control his flight. That plan quickly fell through as Sigurd leapt into the sky after him, positioning himself just above the dragon and rapidly punching the daggers down into his body. Calamate curled inwards as the knives buried themselves in his chest, snarling at them and then tracing his vision back up just in time to see Sigurd bring out the larger crystal greatsword. Every instinct in Calamate screamed at him to not let that weapon so much as touch him. His hands exploded with fire. The momentum of the sudden propulsion hurled him away just as Sigurd punched the sword down. The berserker crashed into the snow a few meters away and rolled along the ground before righting himself, seeing the greatsword bury itself in the snow where he had originally been set to land. The daggers in his chest ripped themselves free and were drawn back to their owner. Sigurd felt the weapons clip onto his belt as he dropped to the ground and swiftly yanked his sword from its resting place. "No more talk," Calamate snarled as he flexed his arms. Fire danced along his body as he advanced forwards, making sure to keep the others in his line of sight. "Oppose me, don't oppose me, it doesn't matter, I'm going to kill all of you." The eye on his forehead glowed, the air screamed. Sigurd felt his entire body lock up, something taking hold of him as if grasped by phantom limbs. Then he felt his body shift and fatigue overwhelm him. The moment the pressure released him, he staggered backwards. Calamate rocketed forwards much faster than he had been previously, his left arm pulled back in preparation for a downwards haymaker. Sigurd stared up at the approaching fist and willed his body to move, channeling power through his limbs and angling his body backwards. He pushed off the ground, watching as the fist just scraped past the tip of his nose and missed him. He jerked Graham in his hands, pulling it upwards and aiming to slice through the overextended arm. Midway through the slash, he felt the sword suddenly lock in place. His eyes darted down to see the right hand tightly gripped around the blade of the sword, black blood already streaming down the surface where the sword had slashed into the palm. Calamate yanked Sigurd forwards with all his might, then swung his knee upwards into the knight's chest. Sigurd felt his body fold over the knee and his ribs break on impact. Air was forced from his lungs in a single wheezing gasp, soon followed by a stream of blood as he was launched away from the dragon and Graham ripped from his hands. Even as he flew through the air, he called out with his senses. Graham pulled itself free from Calamate's grasp, slashing open the hand and spilling more blood into the snow. The enemy servant hissed and brought the hand up to stare at it before shifting their attention to the charging duo of Gordon and Leto. All the while he failed to notice the giant saber-toothed tiger shrouded in darkness bounding towards him at full pelt. And, yep. Calamate freaked the fuck out, as you would imagine him to. Also our second proper fight of the Singularity, anyway. Leto, Silver Knight Servant. Berserker Strength, A+. Endurance, B+. Agility, D. Mana, D. Luck, C. Noble Phantasm, B. Call to Stone, B. Anti-unit, max target, 1, max range, 5. Hammer draws in stones and debris from its surroundings, strengthening the weapon before it is slammed into their opponent. Class skills. Mad Enhancement, D. His reasoning and higher thinking remain very much intact. Were it not for the presence of the skill, he would very easily be mistaken for not being a berserker at all. Except in combat, where he will become single-mindedly focused on destroying his opponent, regardless of personal cost. Magic Resistance. C. Divinity. D. Race of Lords. Although not as well known as Gwyn's Knights, he was still remarkably well known for a Silver Knight. His higher level of divinity is proof of his more powerful soul. Personal skills. Miracles. D. has the ability to use low-level lightning-based miracles. However, he has rarely used the skill due to preferring physical combat. Mystic Slayer. C. acquired through roaming distant lands and slaying many creatures of all walks of life. Call to Adventure. Undaunted by new locations, he can quickly adapt to his surroundings. Traversing across the lands he visits is simple. As long as it is recognized as a mode of transport, he can use it. Friend of the Giants. B+. A good friend to many giants throughout the lands, can briefly enhance his endurance as proof of this bond. Eccentricity in spades. C++ Leto is one for eccentricity, therefore he will occasionally get flashes of ideas that are nothing short of horrifyingly insane. However, if something is stupid but it works, can it really be called stupid? Summoning. I am Leto, Wandering Silver Knight and Berserker Class Servant. Wait, Berserker? I'm not crazy. Dialogue 1. I've been to a few human cities in my time, but they weren't like this. It's not a human city. Oh, that makes sense. This is a village, isn't it? Dialogue 2. Master and Servant. I guess, I just went around and did my own thing whenever I wanted to do it. The other Silver Knights kind of thought I was a weirdo though. Where was I? Ah, right, yeah. I'll be there to help you out. Dialogue 3. I have to be a little delicate sometimes, some of the stuff around here breaks easily. Really easily actually, maybe you should work on getting it made more sturdy? Dialogue 4. If you have Archon, it's me. It's Leto, you remember me, right? I know you do. Did you just spit on me? Huh? A false knight and a filthy traitor? That's a little harsh, isn't it? Dialogue 5. If you have Archon, after completing Archon interlude. I guess it makes sense why he doesn't like me all that much. I did sort of wander off before the war against the demons, but I was never called up for it anyway. I would have come back if I had been, but no one really stopped me from leaving. It's too late to think about what would and could have been. I think a bit of him died in Izalith and he's just going through the motions now. After Lord Gwyn died, I still had my adventures to go on. I'm not sure what everyone else had. Dialogue 6. If you have Seifer, yeah, I know about Captain Seifer. He was in command of the new Londo patrol, at least before it. Well, actually, I think he was the one who set fire to the lower quarters of the city. Huh, well, he was an alright kind of guy. Less uptight than Captain Archon but still a bit tense. Maybe I should invite him out for a drink. Dialogue 7. If you have Astolfo, it's like having a like-minded soul about. We both just do whatever we feel like and go on adventures. Huh. What's with that horrified face you have on? Dialogue 8. If you have Roland, I like doing whatever I want but that seems a little much, doesn't it? Well, I guess if he wants to go butt naked no way. There's got to be a limit. Dialogue 9. If you have Havel, it's me. Leto, ha ha ha. You can tell he's happy because he only gave a single grunt before he turned away. Don't worry, he's always like this. Still, Havel never liked mages and you're a mage. He must really like you if you aren't dead yet. Dialogue 10. If you have Nameless King, there's doing your own thing and then there's that. I don't get it but maybe I'm not supposed to get it. I might have walked out of an Orlando, but I never once betrayed my oath as a Silver Knight. Dialogue 11. If you have Quetzalcoatl, she's really cheerful, isn't she? A goddess of the sun, I like her. Dialogue 12. If you have Calamate, we didn't really think about anything when we got told to kill the dragons. It's like a reflex when the gods tell you to do something. You just do it and don't think about it. In the first place, they were the gods and I was me. How am I supposed to say what should and shouldn't be done? He can hate me if he wants though, I think he's allowed that much. Dialogue 13. If you have any of the 4 knights. Wow. The 4 knights of Lord Gwyn. They're really famous, I'm famous too but that's just because I was a Silver Knight that walked around the world. They're really famous. Likes, things I like. I just like doing whatever I want. Well, I like things not being too complicated, if you get what I mean. I went on adventures, saw new things, did some little quests and then left. It was exciting. Hates, I'm not like Archon and Seifer so I can't do complicated stuff. Being tied down to one spot for too long is also, don't get me wrong, I'm not about to leave Chaldea because you're not expecting me to stand guard here for the next 500 years, right? Wish for the Holy Grail? A wish? I'd like to go on a really long adventure. One with loads of twists and turns and a bunch of exciting stuff. Which, actually, I don't think I need a wish granter for that right now, do I? Bond level 1. This is pretty exciting stuff isn't it? Well, it's definitely not boring. Bond level 2. Hey, are you having fun? That's one of the most important parts of a quest. If only one person is having fun, then it's not a good quest. You are? That's great. Bond level 3. There are some times in quests where you have to take a little break and relax. I love excitement but don't forget to go easy on yourself. You're only human. Bond level 4. I've had loads of different types of friends before, Lordkin, human, giant. I actually made friends with a demon once. That was, really weird, now that I remember it. Anyway, point is that I'm happy to call you a friend. Bond level 5. Hey, when this adventure is over, I think we're both due a nice long rest. That sound good to you? It sounds good to me, hey. I'm always the eccentric Silver Knight, but I can take some time out of my day for a little rest. Birthday. I know this one. I've helped celebrate loads of birthdays before. Easy. It involved a sword and wait, wrong kingdom. No wait. I need a horse, a jar of honey and a spear. We're also going to need to find an old shirt and a torch. During an event. This has all the makings of being a very good adventure. First ascension. Was something supposed to happen? You're giving me this expectant look? Second ascension. Hey, is my cape a little cleaner than it was before? I think so. I think my armor is shinier as well. You're still giving me this disappointed look. Third ascension. I'm supposed to change my outfit. Oh, ooh. I think I did that once but I didn't really stick all that well. I sort of chucked it. I wonder what happened to that anyway. Fourth ascension. Tell you what, if I ever have the time I'll see about making up the set of armor for you. Just so I can change into it. Altering my outfit seems to be something I can do every now and again, right? For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.